3, lessons 6 and 7, continuing chapter 28, Lord Kapila Dev's instructions on the execution of devotional service. Samapriya, you want to pick someone to
Okie
start our
dokie.
reading?
Good morning. Hare Krishna, everyone. Nice to see everyone enthusiastic and smiling. Tisha and Himavati. There we go. Okay, why don't we start today with Himavati reading? With that, and just for a moment, take a look at this magnificent picture of Krishna, who you can easily fall in love with. Himavati, you want to read?
Yeah, I hope I will not lose my internet. I have a problem right now, but I can start.
You know what you can do, actually, Himavati, turn off your visual. Turn off the video on, just to make a line through it. Just turn it off so that it's easier. Manvantara does that when she speaks also. It makes it a little easier. Good. Okay. Now read.
Okay. Well, it's still on my way. Okay, good. The yogi then
Meditates. Not good, huh?
Sounds like she cut off.
Okay.
We lost her.
Okay, we lost her. We lost you. Okay. Manvantara, why don't you take up and then she can read later. Just start the whole thing again.
Text 30. The yogi then meditates upon the beautiful face of the Lord, which is adorned with curly hair and decorated by lotus-like eyes and dancing eyebrows. A lotus surrounded by swarming bees and a pair of swimming fish would be put to shame by its elegance. Purport. Manomayam is a carving of the form of the Lord within the mind. This is included as one of the 8 different carvings of the form of the Lord. It is not imagination. Meditation on the actual form of the Lord may be manifested in different manners, but one should not conclude that one has to imagine a form. There are 2 comparisons in this verse. First, the Lord's face is compared to a lotus, and then his black hair is compared to hummingbees swarming around the lotus. And his 2 eyes are compared to 2 fish swimming about. A lotus flower on the water is very beautiful when surrounded by hummingbees and fish. The Lord's face is self-sufficient and complete. His beauty defies the natural beauty of a lotus.
Thank you. Okay, there's a very important point in the purport that Prabhupada is mentioning about imagining a form of the Lord. Can you say something about that?
It's just that the mind will tend to do that, I suspect, because I've used words like imagine and so forth, but there's so much description of the physical form of the Lord, if physical is a transcendental physical form of the Lord, that there's no need to imagine. But the point that Prabhupada, I believe, is making is you can't concoct a form of Krishna.
Exactly. Very good. That's what I was looking for. And we have a tendency in this age to concoct everything. So now we have the perfect system, parampara, that will give us all the information, and we need not concoct. And we know that the service that we're doing is directly going to God. So that's very encouraging. Okay, Kanti, you need to say something about this?
Yeah, that first part of the purport where it says Manomayam is a carving of form of the form of the Lord within the mind. It's very important. What is the difference, we may ask, between offensive chanting, clearing chanting, namabas, and sudhanam, the pure chanting of the holy name? What is the difference? It's the same name. If you're sitting and listening to someone chant, it's very difficult to tell whether they're in the offensive. Of course, if they're being offensive, that's a different thing. But if they're clearing or if they're on the pure stage. So anybody have any insight as to what the difference is between the clearing stage and the pure stage while chanting Hare Krishna?
It has to be authorized, right? It has to be an authorized format. Like we chant Hare
No,
Krishna based on how.
Anybody, I'm saying just chanting, if you listen to someone chanting their rounds, Hare Krishna, they're a devotee, they're chanting their rounds. What's the difference between Namabas, which is the clearing stage, and Sudanam, which is the clean, pure stage of consciousness?
Oh. Anyone?
Attentiveness?
Attentiveness is one of the features, certainly. But the root that I'm looking for is it's one's intent, one's motives, one's inner desires, and one's internal thought process, what we're thinking of. If you're thinking of something other than Krishna, in the 6th canto, we'll read about this in the story of Ajamil. He was thinking of his son, who was named Narayan. And when the Yamadutas came to pull him out of his body because he had lived such a sinful life, he called his son Narayan with so much feeling that it actually attracted the Vishnu Dutas. But he only chanted Namabas because he was thinking of something other than the Lord. He was thinking of his son. So while we're chanting our rounds, if we're thinking of so many other things that can be filled in the mind, then we're not really meditating on Krishna. We're meditating on something else. And therefore, this carving of the mind, carving of the image within the mind, manomayam, it's a great example, carving of the form of the Lord. If we're going to do a carving in stone or wood, it takes time. We had the nice opportunity, Samapriya and I, in Puri when we were there. We actually went from the very stage to going to buy the wood, finding an artist, designing the deities, and going to visit him regularly, that artist, as he carved the form of Gornitai. And it was amazing how the details, just by shaving a little bit here on his eyelids, a little bit there on his lips, a little bit there on his arms and shoulders, changed ever so slightly the mood of that deity. So in the same way, our chanting, it takes time and it takes practice, but it should evolve into a progressive practice of nama, hearing the name, rupa, meditating on the form of the Lord, nama, rupa, guna, the characteristics of the Lord, his character, his personality, and finally, lila, the activities of the Lord come to mind. So Lord Kapila Deva is giving instructions how to do this, and it's important to follow them systematically to develop these practices.
Thank you.
So, Prabhu, are you saying that purity is not a factor
Purity of what?
of the devotee?
What purity? What? How does purity? What is? I said consciousness. Other than consciousness, you're saying like the activities following the 4 regulative principles and a regulated sadhana. Is
We
that what you're referring to?
usually think of Uttam Adhikaris who are like pure, they are chanting Shuddhanam, but Kanishta and Madhyam Adhikaris are between Namaparat and Namava.
So what is
my
the
understanding
difference?
was, yeah.
That's what I'm asking. What is the difference? What do you mean by pure?
That's it. That's the question. What is pure? What does actual purity mean?
They have no material desires, nothing material in them.
And they're not relating to the body as the self. You
They're
relate.
not
the
asking
body-
Krishna for anything. We read about that, I think, last week, where the mixed devotees, they want to go to the eternal abode. They want to associate with the Lord. They want to know more about their relationship with the Lord. A person in pure devotional service already knows those things, so he's not thinking of that. The root that I'm trying to talk about, Premananda, is what are you thinking about while you're chanting?
Mm.
If we look at that description of Namabasa, the verse from the 6th canto, You'll find sometimes it's joking, sometimes it's thinking of something else, sometimes it's offensive. These are the different pitfalls and the difference between Sudanam and Namabas. So carving a form of the Lord, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Man mana bhavamad bhakto, madhyaji mam namaskuru. Always think of me, offer me obeisances, become my devotee, and the result,
You will come.
surely
to
you will
me.
come to me, because the consciousness is being purified. So thinking of Krishna, hearing of Krishna is obviously purifying. Srinvatam svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana. But after hearing, we should also start to think of Krishna. Keep a picture of the deity or a form of the Lord that's dear to you, and often refer to it and study it. I mean, this whole chapter, we've started at the feet. Now we're going up to the face, but this whole chapter, execution of devotional service. Lord Kapilati, what is that execution? Think of Krishna. Think of the form of the Lord, because that in itself is purifying, because he is pure and transcendental.
Thank you.
Tisha, did you have a question or something?
Well, I wanted to say about what you were saying is if you live at the ashram and you're following the principles and you're surrounding your daily life filled with Krishna consciousness, I'm thinking it's easier because, like, for me, we had a big argument at work, and so then when I try to chant, the only thing I was thinking about was, oh, I should have said this and I should have done that, and why didn't I do this? But if you're living a material life, and it's hard because whatever's happening in your daily life, and when you try to chant, it's hard to switch gears, I guess, get that stuff out of your mind.
Yes.
That's very true. Unfortunately, that also happens wherever you are, although the Association of Devotees gives one a lot of strength surrounding yourself with devotional activities. But the mind is, what does Arjuna say about the mind? It's the most difficult thing to control, even more difficult than the wind. That's why we're reading these. We have to constantly read. It's a constant endeavor. It's not I read it and that's finished. It's a constant endeavor to read and chant. And if your obstacles out there are big, what does that mean? It means you have to even more. You take more vitamins, real medicine. So if that's bothering you, you got to do this more. Hearing and chanting seriously. I mean, we don't have much time. We just saw a few of our devotees just in 2 weeks left. So, this is a warning. Now's the time to become Krishna conscious.
A little more on a scientific approach. A few years ago, I learned and studied the concept of plasticity, neuroplasticity, our brains. Let's just use it as a machine. Since the development of computers and computer sensors, they have these skull caps, perhaps you've seen them, they put them on patients, and they can actually map a person's thought process and emotions by the electrical impulses that go on within the brain. So they're called synapses in between the different brain cells. And they used to think, prior to this possibility of measuring the impulses, the doctors used to think that once a person was in their 20s and was mature, that the brain pretty much stopped developing and just continued on throughout life as you developed it. But now they're finding that at every moment, the brain is constantly calculating and working and adjusting. And what this practice of chanting does, they even found this with the Buddhist meditators, that the part of their brain that because they had developed it, they actually physically developed part of their brain, became bigger and more active than other parts of the brain that other people use. So the reason I bring that up is that it takes practice, and practice develops a particular thing over time. We've all experienced that with habits and activities that we do. If you continue to do it time over time over time, that will clear up. We've all had the experience you were talking about, Tisha, and still have it. So can certainly relate with it.
Chant more, read more, do it all more. Yeah. Okay, let's go on. Thank you. Himavati, would you like to try reading again?
Yeah, I'll try, but I have difficulties with my computer. Now
I
I'm
know.
just
Okay.
with my cell phone. I will try. If it
Okay.
doesn't give up on me, I'm lucky. Okay, I'll try. The yogi should contemplate, oh, pardon me, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28, 31, 32. The yogi should contemplate with full devotion the compassionate glance frequently cast by the Lord's eyes for the Suti,
Soothe.
the Sut,
Before
the
they
most
soothe.
shoot most fearful the threefold agonies of his devotee. Agonies. His glance accompanied by a loving, smiling, and full of abundant grace. Abundant grace. The yogi should similarly meditate on the most
Benevolent.
smile of Lord Sri Hari, a smile which for all those who bow to him drives away the ocean of tears caused by the immense grief. The yogi should also meditate on the Lord's arched eyebrows, which are manifested by his internal potency in order to charm the sex god for the good of the sages. Purport. One cannot avoid the influence of material energy, even when one is on the transcendental plane. Sometimes a disturbance comes, but the agony and anxiety of a devotee are at once immediate when they think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his beautiful form or the smiling face of the Lord. The entire universe is full of miseries, and therefore the inhabitants of this material universe are always shedding tears out of intense grief. There is a great ocean of water made of such tears, but for one who surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ocean of tears is at once dry up. One needs only see the charming smile of the Supreme Lord. In other words, the bereavement of material existence immediately subside when one sees the charming smile of the Lord. Wow.
Thank you. Well, that's the solution. What do you think about the smiling face as the panacea for drying up the ocean of tears by the grief, caused by the grief of this world? The smiling face of the Lord. Can you say something about that, Himavati?
Yeah, actually, I did a try this morning while chanting my rounds to concentrate on the lotus feet of the Lord, because I have a tendency when I look at the deities to always go directly to the face. And I truly saw a big difference in my meditation. And as they say, any part of the Lord's body is the same. So the feet and the smile are the same because he can do everything with any parts of his body. So I would say that for me, that relief came from that meditation on the Lord this morning. That was very, very helpful and very effective.
Very good, Hemavati. That's application of what we're learning. Thank you. That's a very good realization. Shangovind, I want to ask you a question just real quick before we go on with the next slide. What do you think about this ocean of tears that the smiling face of the Lord can dissolve? Sham?
It seems like we're all suffering in this material world since it's Dukkhalayam, Shashvatam, place of misery. So if we just seek the shelter of the Lord, whether that's through his name or through his form, it's the same thing.
Good.
Those things can be mitigated, or in the beginning stages, just reduced even.
Absolutely. That's good. That's beautiful. That's what I was looking for also. Thank you. Okay, keep that in mind. If anybody has something to say or add to any of these wonderful points about drying up the ocean of tears, then keep it in mind and then share it with everyone. Okay, Nandaji, are you there? Would you like to read? Thank you, Hemavati ji.
Sure. Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 28, text number 33. With devotion steeped in love and affection, the yogi should meditate within the core of his heart upon the laughter of Lord Vishnu. The laughter of Vishnu is so captivating that it can easily be meditated on. No, that it can be easily meditated upon. When the Supreme Lord is laughing, one can see his small teeth, which resemble jasmine buds, rendered rosy by the splendor of his lips. Once devoting his mind to this, the yogi should no longer desire to see anything else. Srila Prabhupada's purport, it is recommended that the yogi visualize the laughter of the Lord after studying his smile very carefully. These particular descriptions of meditation on the smile, laughter, face, lips, and teeth all indicate conclusively that that God is not impersonal. It is described herein that one should meditate on the laughter or smiling or Vishnu. There's no other activity that can completely cleanse the heart of the devotee. The exceptional beauty of the laughter of Lord Vishnu is that when he smiles, his small teeth, which resemble the buds of jasmine flowers, at once become reddish, reflecting his rosy lips. If the yogi is able to place the beautiful face of the Lord in the core of his heart, he will be completely satisfied. In other words, when one is absorbed in seeing the beauty of the Lord within himself, the material attraction can no longer disturb him.
Okay, before you comment on this, Nanda, I'd like to ask everyone to please mute if you're not speaking, because the kind of sound is a distraction. Please mute Hemavati, if you can find the mute button. Okay, thank you. Nandaji, please explain the laughter of the Lord.
I can explain it. I'd like to hear it, actually.
Me too.
But even just the description of the laughter of the Lord is captivating, and it's like it attracts the mind. Yes. And his beautiful smile there that's on the slide, you see his little jasmine teeth. That also reminds me of sometimes when you get darshan of Radharaman, sometimes he has a smile with teeth showing, and sometimes they're not showing. And it's the same lips. Like sometimes they put different eyes on him, but they don't physically change his smile. But there are pictures of him with his little smile and his little teeth showing. So it's there and we have to look for it. And I'll just say one thing about our Krishna and Balaram, so attractive here in Alachua. When you go up close to Krishna, on Krishna and Balaram particularly, he has a very enchanting smile that's not as visible if you're in the middle of the temple room or at the end of the temple room. So I recommend, if you're local, go up and look at his he has a smile. The first time I saw Krishna was before he was installed. Sorry, I'll be finished in a second. The first time I saw Krishna before he was installed, he was in Pandya's, the carver's shop. He had this so attractive smile, like he was saying, I just stole the butter, but so far she hasn't caught me. And it was just like amazing. And so, Hare Krishna.
I think also you have to have some spiritual vision, which Nanda has. Hare Krishna.
Imitations only.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Nandaji. Okay, Shukshma Rupini, are you able to read? Shukshma?
Yeah.
Okay, great. You want to read this slide?
Okay, hold on. I got to expand it on my phone. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28-34. By following this course, the yogi gradually develops pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari. In the course of his progress in devotional service, the hairs on his body stand erect through excessive joy. He is constantly bathed in a stream of tears, occasioned by intense love. Gradually, even the mind, which he used as a means to attract the Lord, as one attracts a fish to a hook, withdraws from material activity. Purport. Here it is clearly mentioned that meditation, which is an action of the mind, is not the perfect stage of samadhi or absorption. In the beginning, the mind is employed in attracting the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in the higher stages, there is no question of using the mind. A devotee becomes accustomed to serving the Supreme Lord by purification of his senses. In other words, the yoga principles of meditation are required as long as one is not situated in pure devotional service. The mind is used to purify the senses. But when the senses are purified by meditation, there is no need to sit in a particular place and try to meditate upon the form of the Lord. One becomes so habituated that he automatically engages in the personal service of the Lord. When the mind forcibly is engaged upon the form of the Lord, this is called Nirbija Yoga, or lifeless yoga. For the yogi does not automatically engage in the personal service of the Lord, but when he is constantly thinking of the Lord, that is called Sabija Yoga or living yoga. One has to be promoted to the platform of living yoga. Sabija Yoga. Interesting. Doesn't bija mean seed?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so with the seed and kind of without the seed, near bija, lifeless. I had never heard those terms, but I think this is kind of like talking about, you can either go to the whole Ashtanga program, or you just, climb all the stairs to the top, or simply take the elevator by meditating. These really, really helpful, really beautiful, incredible verses that are being given here. I mean, that the little teeth. I mean, this is so incredible. I couldn't believe reading this, I'm very grateful for all these verses in this chapter.
Okay, I have a question though, of course. So why is it that this yoga, in terms that we can understand, because actually when I was reading this verse in the purport, I was trying to figure it out. What do you mean don't use the mind? What does that actually mean? What is the basic thing about Hatha yoga or Sangha yoga which is different than Bhakti yoga? What is a word or some explanation that can help us understand what Carl was saying here about the difference?
Well, I don't think you're looking for the more direct, for one thing, but that's not what you're looking for.
Well, I'll just say, and then you can comment on it. I don't know, but it was my little realization of it seems mechanical, using the mind, sitting it, forcing a form of the Lord. It's mechanical. There is a mechanical system to developing your concentration, doing the breathing, withdrawing the senses. It's mechanical. So that takes a long time to do it mechanically. But if you fall in love with Krishna, or if you immediately engage in his service, you're immediately thinking of him, and it enters the heart. It enters the heart, which the mechanical process takes a long time to enter the heart, because the heart has to become. What do you think?
It's love versus
good,
skills, sort of. mechanical skills, which
Yeah.
has been that'd be so tiring and boring, and it's not recommended anyway. In this age, we don't live long enough.
Right, very good.
Yeah.
Good, thank you, Shukshma. Anyone else have something to say? I saw a hand. Wait a minute, I think Seta. Is that how you say your name again? What is, how do you say your name?
Chatamai Devi Das.
Chatamai. I don't know. Chatamai.
Haribo, Danava pranams, everyone. My question is that this contrast between Nir Bij and Sam Bij, isn't that the same thing as Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti versus Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti?
I think kind of, because Vaidhi is following the rules and the regulations, but Vaidhi leads to Raganuga. Patti, can you answer this one?
Yeah, I think that was a very good, how do you say, analogy or bringing it. As we were reading last week and the week before that, a little more, because he'd already made the point so many times, Srila Prabhupada isn't continuing to make the same point, that the practice that the yogi undergoes and the practice of bhakti yoga go hand in hand. They're very much the same thing. Let's go back to the verse again just for a second and see about what this is. Not a different than bhakti yoga. She is a bhakti yogi. This is what Lord Kapila did. Is by following this course, the devotee gradually develops pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. And then he starts to feel ecstatic symptoms, which are the symptoms of bhava. In the course of his progress of devotional service, the hairs of his body stand on end erect through excessive joy, and he constantly bathed in a stream of tears. What does Lord Chaitanya pray? Nayanam Galara Shudaraya Vadanam Gadgaruraya. He's praying for the same thing. So what happens is that the Mother Yasoda, while she was boiling the milk, one of the famous stories or ways of thinking of Krishna, it's described that when Mother Yasoda started to cook the milk on for the Damodarastakam day, that while she was churning the milk and cooking, she was singing the pastimes of Krishna. And in the purport, it was stated that if one wants to remember the Lord and falls in love with the Lord, this is a natural occurrence. It's not something that's forced, like Chatamai was just pointing out. It's a raga. It's a natural, spontaneous outflow of love. It's not that she had to make herself, write it down, and not that that wouldn't be spontaneous either, but just spontaneously, she was singing songs of Krishna. So this yogi and bhakti yoga are the same thing in their ultimate issue.
Well, bhakti, in the verse, it says the bhakti yogi. It's referring to devotional service. So the yogi has to come to the platform of devotional service first.
Where does it say devotional service?
Up in the verse. Up in the verse. In the course of his progress in devotional service, his hairs.
Yes.
So that, so in order to get to the platform that we're looking for, one has to perform devotional service, which is based on love.
What are the different forms of devotional service? What are the practices?
Someone?
Shravanam, Kirtanam.
Third one?
Smaranam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam.
Vishnu Smaranam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. This is Smaranam. This is remembering the Lord. That's how I opened the thing today, the review, because Lord Kapila Dev is focusing. His main message is think of the Lord. Smaranam.
Okay.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Let's go on with Tisha reading. Tisha?
Thank you. Hare Krishna, everyone. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28-35. When the mind is thus completely freed from all material contamination and detached from material objectives, it is just like the flame of a lamp. At that time, the mind is actually dovetailed with that of the Supreme Lord and is experienced as one with him because it is freed from the interactive flow of the material qualities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the material world, the activities of the mind are acceptance and rejection. As long as the mind is in material consciousness, it must be forcibly trained to accept meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But when one is actually elevated to loving the Supreme Lord, the mind is automatically absorbed in thought of the Lord. In such a position, a yogi has no other thought than to serve the Lord. This dovetailing of the mind with the desires of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called nirvana, or making the mind one with the Supreme Lord. The best example of nirvana is cited in Bhagavad Gita. In the beginning, the mind of Arjuna deviated from Krishna's. Krishna wanted Arjuna to fight, but Arjuna did not want to, so there was disagreement. But after hearing Bhagavad Gita from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Arjuna dovetailed his mind with Krishna's desire. This is called oneness.
Good. So what is called oneness?
When you dovetail your mind with Krishna's desire.
That sounds like a good thing to get off the mental platform. That's a good trick. What else?
How are you supposed to know what Krishna's desire is? Because he's not speaking the Bhagavad Gita to me.
Oh, yes, he is. You're not reading the Bhagavad Gita. He is speaking the Bhagavad Gita to you. Arjuna is a pure devotee. He doesn't need to hear it. But of course, a pure devotee only wants to hear it. He is speaking the Bhagavad Gita. He is so much. Krishna, you know what? Krishna sees every little thing that we do. He sees us looking at him. He sees us trying to solve a problem without looking at him. He sees everything and he is reaching out. There's so much scripture. There's so much. We have the holy name. You know, yes, you can't read it. You read the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks directly to you. Haven't you read these verses? Didn't you feel like the Lord is talking directly to you? I mean, that's it. He's talking to us, you know. It depends on how much. We're very thick. We need to hear him talk all day to us, not just like a few minutes here and there, you know. A little bit we need to make some endeavor, you know. That might sound mechanical, but then when you get into it, it's definitely a love trip. It's beautiful when you fall in love with Krishna and it's, you know, all these wonderful things start to happen. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right, good. Anyone else? Let's go on then with Premananda reading the next slide. Patti, unmute. Did you want to say something, Patti? Unmute.
No, I was looking it up. I was just recording the very end of Lord Kapila Dev's instructions, like at the very end up there in the final chapter. And Maitreya says to Vidura, thus instructing the world by instructing his mother, Kapila Dev completed his statements. So in the same way, Krishna not only spoke to Arjuna, Krishna spoke to the world by teaching Arjuna.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, Premanandaji.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28-36. Thus, situated in the highest transcendental stage, the mind ceases from all material reaction and becomes situated in its own glory, transcendental to all material conceptions of happiness and distress. At that time, the yogi realizes the truth of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He discovers that pleasure and pain, as well as their interactions, which he attributed to his own self, are actually due to the false ego, which is a product of ignorance. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When the mind is dovetailed to act according to the desire of the Lord, one has attained the transcendental stage. The desire to lord it over material nature is the cause of ignorance, and when that desire is completely extinguished and the desires are dovetailed with those of the Supreme Lord, one has reached the perfectional stage. Upalabdha paratma kashtaha. Upalabdha means realization. Realization necessarily indicates individuality. In the perfectional, liberated stage, that is actual realization. Nivritya means that the living entity keeps its individuality. Oneness means that he realizes happiness in the happiness of the Supreme Lord. In the Supreme Lord, there is nothing but happiness. Anandamayo Bhyasat. The Lord is by nature full of transcendental happiness. In the liberated stage, oneness with the Supreme Lord means that one has no realization other than happiness. But the individual still exists. Otherwise, this word, Upalabdha, indicating individual realization of transcendental happiness, would not have been used. Hare Krishna.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so this is a great verse. I love when it says, situated in your own glory. That's something we want. We want to be situated in our own glory. And if you're, what are the qualifications to be situated in your own glory, Premananda?
The mind has to stop all material desires and everything. The mind has to be perfectly situated in Krishna consciousness.
Okay, not attached to anything material.
Right.
Not attached to anything. I mean, if we could go through maybe 1 hour, how about 5 minutes with not having anything, any other desire other than being Krishna conscious, other than and curbing our false ego? That would be a good exercise. Have you ever experienced that?
I tried. I cannot fix my mind for too long. There's just too many thoughts coming in.
We have to stand in our own glory, and then we won't have to stand in someone else's glory, because we're always thinking, "Oh, I want that glory, this and that." You know, it's glorious. We're all situated in glory. We just have to see. But we're seeing material energy. Does anyone else have something to say about this?
Actually,
standing in your own glory.
Premananda and I had a good exchange. I'd like to hear his thought process and realization about this particular verse. Wasn't it this one, Premananda, this one and the previous one, where you were talking about the mind and what happens to the mind when we leave this body?
Yeah, I mean, I think this one or I mean one of these verses. So I think which verses was it?
The mind ceases. You had question about that. Thus situated in the highest transcendence, the mind ceases from all material actions and reactions because it's situated in its own glory, transcendental to the material conceptions of happiness and distress. And it sounded to me like you kind of had some realization about that.
Yes, because in one of the purports, Srila Prabhupada wrote that we use the mind like a hook only to attach to Krishna, and after that there is no function of the mind because you are totally in Krishna consciousness. And my thought was, okay, I mean, the mind is also a subtle body, right? Mind, intelligence, and false ego. But what happens when we attain liberation and attain our spiritual form? Then the mind is no longer there. Then in that case, how do we become absorbed in Krishna? That was my question. I said, okay, in the spiritual world, all the gopis, all the cowherd boys, I mean, how do they become absorbed in Krishna when they don't have the material mind per se? And
they don't, what do they have if they don't have the material? What do they have if they what? Yeah. What do they have?
No, they have the spiritual mind. Everything is spiritual. Their mind intelligence. I forgot that part. I said, okay, if you give up the mind and intelligence, how do we become absorbed? Because sometimes we get so detailed into the technicalities, we forget some of the basic concepts. So Prabhu said, no, we have a spiritual form. We still have go. It's just covered by the material body.
Good.
That's why whatever we see is actually coming from the spiritual, but it's tainted by the material consciousness. Is that a correct understanding, Prabhu?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. That is
That's exactly what happens. We identify, we think that because because it's subtle, it's like door to door with consciousness. Understanding the material body as something gross and separate from me is easy. But mind and consciousness and intelligence and contaminated consciousness, all those things, that's a different animal. So what happens is that the soul is always pure. The example I really like is lights on a stage. You know how they have these big lights, and then they have a wheel in front of the light that's red, green, blue, purple. The light is white, but you can put the filter in front of it, and the whole stage turns red or green or whatever color they want to mix to make it that. So in the same way, consciousness is pure, and love for Krishna is pure. But when it manifests in this material world through our contaminated consciousness, false ego, etc., then we love our mother, our father, our family, our nation. Same love, but it's been filtered through something in the material world, and mind and intelligence are also material elements.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're standing in our own glory. You have to always keep that in mind, in the spiritual mind. Okay. Chatta, would you like to read? Chatta
Hare
Mai?
Krishna. Thank you. Ooh, I'll read the photo. When you awake from a dream, how important is it what those in the dream think of you? Yes, beautiful. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28, 37 and 38. Because he has achieved his real identity, the perfectly realized soul has no conception of how the material body is moving or acting. Just as an intoxicated person cannot understand whether or not he has clothing on his body. The body of such a liberated yogi, although with the senses, is taken charge of. Wow, is taken charge of by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it functions until its destined activities are finished. The liberated devotee, being awake to his constitutional position and thus situated in samadhi, the highest perfectional stage of yoga, does not accept the byproducts of the material body as his own. Thus, he considers his bodily activities to be like the activities of a body in a dream.
Oh my goodness. Go on reading, Chaita.
Amazing. Purport. The following questions may be posed. As long as the liberated soul is in contact with the body, why don't the bodily activities affect him? Doesn't he actually become contaminated by the action and reaction of material activities? In answer to such questions, this verse explains that the material body of a liberated soul is taken charge of by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is not acting due to the living force of the living entity. It is simply acting as a reaction to past activities. Well, here's that great analogy. Even after being switched off, an electric fan moves for some time. That movement is not due to the electric current, but is a continuation of the last movement. Similarly, although a liberated person appears to be acting just like an ordinary man, his actions are to be accepted as the continuation of past activities. In a dream, one may see himself expanded through many bodies, but when awake, he can understand that those bodies were all false. Similarly, although a liberated soul has the byproducts of the body, children, wife, house, etc., he does not identify himself with those bodily expansions. He knows that they are all products of the material dream. Wow, material dream. This is beautiful. So the verse was reminding me of a quote from Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj when he says, please, Lord, come and hijack my consciousness.
Yeah, hijack. Because why? Because the consciousness is.
Because the consciousness, like a plane, is heading in a certain direction. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. But if Lord Krishna, like it says, takes over our body and takes over our consciousness, we're headed in a more natural direction. It's something that we are destined to be a part of eventually, but we have to choose it. We have to choose to allow Krishna to take over. And that comes from the immersion of devotional service. When we are, it's beautiful to process. And what's another thing that's striking me in this purport is that it appears that we're living our life in a material way. It appears that we have these attachments and affiliations, but only devotees can understand where we're at. The rest of the world is going to assume that we are material just like they are. But that's not our job. It's not our job to convince other people that, hey, I'm not a karmi, I'm a bhakta. That's not our job. We just do what we need to do in contact with Krishna, in constant service of him. That's our little, how do you say, it's our little intimacy, it's our little secret. And eventually we can understand that this is reality, and we don't have to affiliate ourselves with the material mentality. Sorry,
Okay.
It took so long.
No, that's good. That's good. You were processing it, and I saw
Yeah,
you go there.
I'm a little slow.
Okay, no, it takes some time. So I was talking about in the purport, you want to go back to the purport, Patti? It's like when you wake up from a dream and you realize what things happened in the dream, they weren't, that's not real. We're in the material. But when you're in the dream, did you ever have a dream where you knew that you were in the dream and you tried to wake up from the dream? It's very hard to have these realizations when you're in the dream. So the fact is that this is a dream. We have to understand, and you talked about job. Our job is actually to help the so-called karmis realize that they're devotees. That gets everyone out of the dream. So this is a very interesting concept, to realize that this is a dream, right? That this is not real. We put so much attention onto having somebody go a certain way in this world, and it's just like, when you wake up, it's gone. You in a dream, you're so attentive to do something, and you wake up, and you even forgot what it was. So this is like that. But we have to have something else to hold on to: reality, Krishna consciousness. Just like Tisha was saying before, how do you do it when you're surrounded by Maya? Okay, that's how you do it. We're all surrounded by Maya. We have to take shelter of Krishna, of his lotus feet, of the philosophy, of the holy name. That's how we do it. We are here to do this. So it's a very possible
Moment by moment.
Moment by moment. Good for you. All right, let's go on now. Kate, would you like to read?
Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam 28:39. Lord Kapila continued, because of great affection for family and wealth, one accepts a son and some money as his own, and due to affection for the material body, one thinks that it is his. But actually, as one can understand that his family and wealth are different from him, the liberated soul can understand that he and his body are not the same. Purport: the status of real knowledge is explained in this verse. There are many children, but we accept some children as our sons and our daughters because of our affection for them, although we know very well that these children are different from us. Similarly, because of great affection for money, we accept some amount of wealth in the bank as ours. In the same way, we claim that the body is ours because of affection for it. I say that it is my body. I then extend that possessive concept to say that it is my hand, my leg, and further, it is my bank balance, my son, my daughter. But actually, I know that the son and the money are separate from me. It is the same with the body. I am separate from my body. It is a question of understanding, and the proper understanding is called pratibuddha. By obtaining knowledge in devotional service or Krishna consciousness, one can become a liberated soul.
Very good. Okay, so complete identification with the body causes one to be in this situation, right? You want to put it back to the words, Pat? Can you comment on that? Complete identification.
This.
Go on.
Well, it's, we spoke about it before, like what is real intelligence? It's knowing the difference between material and spiritual. So we know that, we have the intelligence as devotees to know that we're not the body, but it's very hard to actually live or actually kind of put that into action. I mean, because we wake up in the morning, we have a body, we have kids, we have all this stuff. So it's, but I guess if we have that knowledge that is explained in this verse, I mean, that gives us that is
good. We have to remind ourselves. We have to keep on remembering. Right. We have to keep on reading this and hearing it constantly. Prabhupada always talks about you have to constantly hear, because we hear it and then we go back in our material activities. Somehow or other, as my husband was saying before, when you're chanting, you're remembering it. We have to control the mind by putting Krishna in it, by thinking of this philosophy, even in relation to our dear, most affectionate children, our husbands, wives. We are situated in the material world. And she does not let up for a second. We have to fight back, really. We have to fight back. And it's a wonderful fight. We have the holy name, but it is a battle. We are at war. Prabhupada said we're at war with Maya. It's a constant battle. And we need ammunition. So what's the ammunition, Kate?
We have the holy names, we have association, we have scriptures, we have the guru.
Yeah. So we're not standing alone on the battlefield. We have all of this, but if we have it and then we don't pay attention to it, then, you can lead that old thing, you can lead a horse to water.
As we're going through these texts, I want to point out a thread and the slight change that Lord Kapila Dev has started on. Back here was pretty much the end of a description. When the mind is thus completely freed from all material contamination and detached from material objectives, it's just like the flame of a lamp. At that time, the mind is actually dovetailed with that of the Supreme Lord and is experienced as one with him because it's freed from the interactions of the flow of material qualities. And he was describing how that how the person is situated in the transcendental stage, correct? We read that. The next verse, what Chatamayi read, starts another thread because he's the body of such a liberated soul. He's awake. Actually, it's this verse. He's describing someone who's completely awake. Then it says, Lord Kapila continued, and he actually changes direction slightly here, talking about another type of person, the person who hasn't achieved that level yet. And he'll go on to describe the Achintya Beta Beta concept of what is the soul in relationship to the Lord. So I just wanted to bring that out, that it's a slight change in his thread of thought here.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sometime we get these realization and we're ready and we act upon them, but our surrounding are not connected the same way we are. So they expect us to continue behaving the way we are. Like in family life, especially, they expect us to, to react to their love and so on and so forth. So is there a way that consciously you're there and you're not there?
Yeah, there is a way. It's so many good examples of devotees who are doing their dharma perfectly, but actually they're absorbed in Krishna. That's the art. That's the art of being a devotee, I think. Nanda wanted to say something, and there's Bajra right after Nanda, Bajraji. Nandaji, did you want to say?
Yeah, so now it's three things. So one is when Chacha was saying about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's prayer, please capture me. You know, there's a prayer also by Guru Gopal Das, and it's in the KK songs, Krishna conscious songs, Guru Gopal Das, and it's a prayer to the holy name. And it talks about levels of meditation on the holy name. And it starts exactly with that line. Please captivate my mind. Please forcibly capture my mind. And then it goes to, please let me think of you in heart. Okay, that was one thing. Then another thing, when you, Samapriya, when you said how we're at war and we have to constantly be alert, etc., ready to fight the war. The problem is that we're at war, but the enemy's inside us. He's not outside us, hiding behind a tree, like stuck on our.
Wow.
So it's a constant thing. And then the third comment was just what Himavati just said, was Lord Chaitanya said exactly, gave an exact reply that you gave, Sama, but he worded it, said, it's just like a woman who has a paramour. She's thinking of her paramour, but she's doing her duty. So in the opposite sense, okay, we're interacting with families and friends, and they're expecting us to reciprocate in a certain way, but our paramour, our Krishna, our love for Krishna is there in our head. So it's a bona fide process to do something in one way and have your mind on something else, as long as the mind is on Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Krishna also gives you the intelligence how to do that. Thank you, Nanda.
I have a nice verse that's helped me with this very concept, how to act in the world, but not really be part of it. It's from Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, quoted in in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Seva sadhaka rupena. It means that one's performing seva like a sadhaka with his body. Siddha rupena chatrahi, but meditating on his eternal form. Tadbhava lipsana karya vrajloke anusarata means that with the intention to develop the bhava and mood of the Vraj Loka, of the residents of Vrindavan. It's a beautiful verse by Rupa Goswami. Seva sadhaka rupena, siddha rupena chatrahi, tadbhava lupsana karya, Vraj Lokanu sarata. The advanced devotee who's inclined to spontaneous loving service should follow the activities of a particular associate of Krishna in Vrindavan, or the Krishna, or the residents of Vrindavan, execute his service externally as a regulative devotee, as well as internally from his self-realized position. Thus, he should perform devotional service both externally and internally.
Good. You develop an inner life, not only a mental life, but an inner life. That's the art. Thank you. Shall we go on? I was wondering, Ian, would you like, there we go. Ian, could you read the slide? Oh, wait a minute, Bajra also wants, Bajra, I'll speak to you next, Angel. Okay, Ian, read.
All right, Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. 328:40, the blazing fire is different from the flames, from the sparks, and from the smoke, although all are intimately connected because they are born from the same blazing wood. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Although the blazing firewood, the sparks, the smoke, and the flame cannot stay apart because each of them is part and parcel of the fire, still they are different from one another. A less intelligent person accepts the smoke as fire, although fire and smoke are completely different. The heat and light of the fire are separate, although one cannot differentiate fire from heat and light. Wow.
Explain that now.
Explain
that to us.
Okay. Mm,
We had
okay.
a big fire here the other day, and it was very hot and it was
Yeah.
very light. So how come, but this is
So, so when one's, I can just, when one's things are fire, we know that there's some light, there's some heat, and some sparks. Yeah, that's one to be obvious, but how do you understand that they are different? So, and as it says here, a less intelligent person accepts the smoke as fire. Okay, okay. So, all right. So let's see it now. You see some smoke in a distance, but you say, okay, there's fire, but
I see.
is an indication.
It's an indication that fire is there when you see the smoke.
Yeah. Okay. But he said that the fire and the smoke are completely different. Okay, so we know. Okay, so sometimes there's fire, but sometimes there's not smoke. When it starts, the smoke is not so evident. Sometimes maybe you will not see any smoke again because you reach a point that just see the heat and the lights. Yeah, it's a bit technical here.
Yeah.
The heat and
The subsequent verses go along with it, and we'll explain it further and fluff the concept out.
Okay, you're off the hook, Ian.
okay.
Okay, we got to figure out what this says. Next verse. Before we go on, Baja, did you want to say something? Thank you, Ian. And I'm going to ask you again for an explanation once we understand what that actually meant. Baja?
Yeah, done with everybody. I want to just make one point on the previous verse. If I'm allowed to. Because the family affection is so heavy. Doesn't matter which culture you are coming from. And it's a nice quote here from the 6 Goswamis. Example, that the cut of family affection means elevate our consciousness and broaden field of activity. Because if we hear from the example of Srila Prabhupada, when he had to leave his family, it was difficult for him. We know that it was difficult. Then he didn't want to take sannyas, but he did it because his Guru Maharaj came in the dream. But then when he started ISKCON and he had so many, then he said that I had 3 sons and 3 daughters. Now Sri Krishna has given me thousands. So what it means is that we cannot artificially try to think that I'm in Krishna consciousness, so my family affection are cut off. No, we have to learn to elevate our consciousness and advise at the same time broaden field of activities. Means in our devotional service, we have to broaden activities. Means like always engage in devotional service. Otherwise, we'll go back again to that family. And that's what Srila Prabhupada actually did. He broadened his activities and spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. So he completely absorbed his consciousness in that broader activities of whole ISKCON all over the world. That's what
Good. So when we get really absorbed in Krishna, it will be easier to give up our material attachments. And even with our children and family, we'll be able to see that through Krishna conscious eyes,
Right.
And not think that this is really, I have some connection with this person in this lifetime, maybe,
Right.
But it takes some work. It takes some work, and we're here to do some work. Okay, Gopa, would you like to read? Thank you, Bhadradi. That was an important point.
Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28-41. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as Param Brahma, is the seer. He is different from the Jiva soul or individual living entity who is combined with the senses, the 5 elements, and consciousness. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A clear conception of the complete whole is given herewith. The living entity is different from the material elements, and the supreme living entity, the personality of Godhead, who is the creator of the material elements, is also different from the individual living entity. This philosophy is propounded by Lord Chaitanya as a Chinta Bheda Bheda Tattva. Everything is simultaneously one with and different from everything else. The cosmic manifestation created by the Supreme Lord by his material energy is also simultaneously different and non-different from him. The material energy is non-different from the Supreme Lord. But at the same time, because that energy is acting in a different way, it is different from him. Similarly, the individual living entity is one with and different from the Supreme Lord. This simultaneously one and different philosophy is the perfect conclusion of the Bhagavat school, as confirmed here by Kapila Dev.
Okay.
And if you apply that to the smoke, sparks, fire, and wood, it's a similar concept. He's just developing it.
Wow. That they're the same as fire, but they're different than fire as well. So I have a question for Gopa, though, on this verse. Wait a minute. First, I want to ask, Ian, do you understand that? Do you see the correlation between the concepts of a Chitta Beta Beta Tattva and the example of the fire and the smoke and the flames and the heat?
Yes, I see it. I see it.
Good, good.
I was thinking that there's an example like a spoonful of the sea, the water from the sea. It's the same in terms of quality, but quantitatively it's different.
Right.
So there's the concept of oneness, but different from, so that's
Good.
oneness, but different.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Gopa.
Thanks.
Does that mean, well, Krishna's God and I'm God? Is that what a Chitta Beta Beta Tattva means? Well, Krishna's God, we're the same, but we're different. I'm a different God. What does that mean?
No. Prabhupada said, no. No, we're just like a spark. We're just a drop of the ocean.
Yeah.
The ocean. Krishna's the ocean. We're the drop.
Oh, I see. I mean, isn't it ridiculous
Water.
that people would think of that in the other way around? That I'm actually God and everyone else is a drop. And how do people even come to that conclusion? Okay, what else can you tell me about this, Gopaji? This is a big subject of Chitta Beta Beta Tattva.
I am not a philosopher.
I know you're a deep feeler and a great Sankirtan devotee. So
No.
you must see the soul in everyone.
None of the above. None of the above. I just want to try to do something for Prabhupada.
That's the goal of all of this. Thank you, Gopaji. All right. Wait a second. Faye, would you like to read the next one?
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Purport continued. Living entities are compared to the sparks of a fire. As stated in the previous verse, fire, flame, smoke, and firewood are all combined together. Here the living entity, the material elements, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are combined together. The exact position of the living entities is just like that of the sparks of a fire. They are part and parcel. The material energy is compared to the smoke. The fire is also part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. In the Vishnu Purana, it is said that whenever we can see or experience, either in the material or spiritual world, there is an expansion of the different energies of the Supreme Lord. As fire distributes its light and heat from one place, the Supreme Personality of Godhead distributes his different energies all over his creation.
Wow. So explain that. Let's read this again. Read starting from the fire is also part and parcel. Material energy is compared to the smoke.
All right. The fire is also part and parcel of the Supreme Lord.
Read in the Vishnu Purana, read that part.
Living entities are compared to the sparks of a fire.
In the Vishnu Purana, it is said, that's what I want you to talk about.
Oh, thank you. In the Vishnu Purana, it is said that whatever we can see or experience, either in the material or spiritual world, is an expansion of the different energies of the Supreme Lord.
So that what do you think about that compared to the fire? We can see the fire from a distance and hear it saying what?
In Achinta
Beta Tattva.
Beta Tattva, we're talking about being the Lord being everywhere and everything simultaneously, but separate. It's amazing how God can be everything, but yet aloof. The parts and parcels. If we look with our material eyes, the parts and parcels look very different. A human looks very different than a fish or a bird, but they're still parts and parcels. And if we look internally, that soul, whether it's the bird's soul or the fish's soul or a human soul, those are sparks. Those are parts and parcels of the Supreme Whole, Vishnu, God. So depending on our eyes and our heart and our openness to see, Achinta Beta Tattva is something that we've got to think about all the time as we relate to other entities and as we relate to God, because God's everywhere. We can't be everywhere. The Supreme Soul is within every living being in the conditioned world. Can we do that? No. We're qualitatively very meek and mild and tiny.
Right.
And we're also quantitatively meek and mild and tiny in comparison to the Lord.
Good.
So when you were asking previously in the last slide, how can people think that they're God? That's really a messed up proportion of things.
It is definitely. Thank you, Faye. That's a beautiful explanation of it. That and the other thing is that Krishna is controlling everything from wherever he is.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't do that, but we can serve as a part and parcel. So this is becoming clearly as we move on. And I was just informed we better move along here. Thank you, Faye. Sham Govinda, would you like to read?
Yes, thank you, Brother Samapriya.
Good.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28-42. A yogi should see the same soul in all manifestations, for all that exists is a manifestation of different energies of the Supreme. In this way, the devotee should see all living entities without distinction. That is realization of the Supreme Soul. Purport. The word Sarva Bhuteshu is to be understood as follows. There are 4 different divisions of species. Living entities which sprout from the earth, living entities born of fermentation or germination, living entities which come from eggs, and living entities which come from the embryo. These 4 divisions of living entities are expanded in 8,400,000 species of life. A person who is freed from material designations can see the same quality of spirit present everywhere or in every manifested living entity. Less intelligent men think that plants and grass grow out of the earth automatically, but one who is actually intelligent and has realized the self can see that this growth is not automatic. The cause is the soul, and the forms come out in material bodies under different conditions. By fermentation in the laboratory, many germs are born, but this is due to the presence of the soul. The material scientist thinks that the eggs are lifeless, but this is not a fact. From Vedic scripture, we can understand that living entities in different forms are generated under different conditions. Birds evolve from eggs, and beasts and human beings are born from the embryo. The perfect vision of the yogi or devotee is that he sees the presence of the living entity everywhere.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask you about. The souls are everywhere. This was something that Faye was touching on before in her comment. The souls are everywhere. So please talk about that a little bit. That the souls are all pervasive, really. Not
Okay.
that, yeah, go on.
Well, one aspect is that everything's living, but everything's coming from Krishna, coming from the fire. So the fire is unlimited, and it seems that almost the sparks from the fire are unlimited.
Yeah, good example. They're unlimited. And what does Prabhupada talk about when we see something sprouting in the earth? Is the earth just sprouting that? How come what is actually making that happen?
So it's the soul's energy within whatever body it's beginning with, so a seed, an embryo, just within perspiration, or an egg. But yeah, that's the soul's energy that's making it all happen.
The soul. And what happens if we're unaware of this and we think that we can kill different animals or species or grass and weed, which is what makes us think that we can be in charge of another living entity's birth and death, and they're all pervasive. Go on.
I guess we're not seeing the fire, we're just seeing the smoke, and so we're not. Yeah.
Very good. Ever hear that expression? It's a smoke job. It's a smoke. Yeah, smoke. We're absorbed in the smoke. This is very deep. So many different angles we can look at this. Thank you, Shyam Govind. You have anything else to say about that before we move along? Shyam?
Yes. I just realized that according to this verse means that my body is made of thousands of souls.
Wow. Yeah, Prabhupada said that one time, that we're little universes. Yeah, our bodies are little universes. There's nothing that moves is dead. Everything is moving through.
And I had also a comment to say about this, that when we do book distribution, this vision is absolutely needed, because you cannot say, you see so many people approaching you, and you really have to have that vision that everybody is a vessel to that mercy of Krishna, without distinction.
Very good. Thank you. And thank you and Gopa for both staying out there and distributing Prabhupada's books after so long. Thank you. It's a very hard task. Okay, let's move on. Bhadra, would you like to read this? And I think after this is one more slide, and Arundhati will read that one. Bhadraji?
That's 43. As fire is exhibited in different forms of wood, so under different conditions of the modes of material nature, the pure spirit soul manifests itself in different bodies. Prakriti is an interaction by the three modes of material nature, and according to this mode, someone has a small body and someone has a very large body. For example, fire in a big piece of wood appears very big. In a stick, the fire appears small. Actually, the quality of fire is the same everywhere. But the manifestation of material nature is such that according to the pure, the fire appears bigger and smaller. Similarly, the soul in the universal body, although of the same quality, is different from the soul in the smaller body. The small particles of soul are just like sparks of a large soul. The great soul is the super soul, but the super soul is quantitatively different from the small soul. The super soul is described in the Vedic literature as the supplier of the all necessities of the smaller soul. Now, one who understands this distinction between the super soul and the individual soul is above limitation and is in a peaceful position. When the smaller soul thinks himself quantitatively as big as his large soul, he is under the spell of Maya. But that is not his conscious position. No one can become the greater soul simply by mental speculation.
Wow. Okay, Vajra, would you like to explain that further?
Sure. Thank you. What is he is saying is that, of course, the soul and the super soul are different. That is there. But the point is that the soul is given the different bodies according to the modes of material, modes of material nature individual has acquired. And on that basis, the soul has received this body, this material body. And that's why we are going on. But the basic principle of birth, death, old age, this is birth, death, old age, these are the same, whether you are in this country or another country, same problem is there with the body. So that is the main thing, that we acquire different body because we got different, we attach to different modes of material nature. So now, go about the body concept and understand that you don't want to get another body out of it and go through the same four conditioning, right?
Right. It seems like Prabhupada is saying two very important points in this purport, and all throughout these purports, distinguishing the individual soul from the super soul and acknowledging the similarity, the sameness between all souls, no matter what your modes of nature are. There might be a big fire or a small fire, just like Lord Brahma. He's a big personality, but his soul is as big as your soul. Right. So there's two different factors that Prabhupada is always stressing, that we should see with equal vision all people. Like when you're on Sankirtan, Hemabhati was saying that she sees the souls coming. She has to see that they're individual souls. They're part and parcel of Krishna. And on the other side, we are all servants of Krishna. Anyone else have something to add to that before we go on to the last slide, and then we will have a nice little discussion. Okay, Arundhati, are you there?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, my darling. Please read the slide for us.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28-44. Thus the yogi can be in the self-realized position after conquering the insurmountable spell of Maya, who presents herself as both the cause and effect of this material manifestation and is therefore very difficult to understand. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Daivi Prakriti, or the external energy of the Supreme Lord, is Durvibhavya, very difficult to understand and very difficult to conquer. One must, however, conquer this insurmountable spell of Maya, and this is possible by the grace of the Lord, when God reveals himself to the surrendered soul. It is also stated here, Swarupena Vatishtate. Swarupa means that one has to know that he is not the Supreme Soul, but rather part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. That is self-realization. To think falsely that one is the Supreme Soul and that one is all-pervading is not Swarupa. This is not realization of his actual position. The real position is that one is part and parcel. It is recommended here that one remain in that position of actual self-realization. For those who engage in devotional service, there is no spell of Maya, and their situation is all perfect. The duty of the living entity as a part and parcel of the whole is to render devotional service to the whole. That is the ultimate perfection of life. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 28th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Kapila's Instructions on the Execution of Devotional Service.
Okay, leave the slide here so we can read from it. When there's several different things that I want you to talk about here. What about this? When God reveals himself to the surrendered soul. Now, which one of us doesn't want that? So how do we get him to reveal himself to us? By being a surrendered soul. Talk about that.
So, we all think that if I'm going to chant 16 rounds, I mean, I think if I chant 16 rounds and if I do stuff, God is going to reveal himself. But then later on, thankfully we have these great associations where we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then we come across instances where even when Narad Muni was meditating, Lord Krishna appeared to him for a few fleeting seconds, and he never revealed himself after that. Even for Dhruva Maharaj, when Dhruva Maharaj was meditating, Lord Krishna revealed himself, and he never did again. So it's then that it makes you so humble that, such highly exalted devotees get to see the Lord for fleeting seconds. And here we are in this world, assuming that God is going to reveal himself. But one thing that does come to mind is that Srila Prabhupada says, don't expect Krishna to reveal himself to you. Work in such a way that Krishna looks at you. I think it's in one of the...
act in such a way that Krishna wants to see you.
Wants to see you, yeah.
Good. But we also, we have to do the work. We want this most sublime thing. And if we think, okay, this is how you do it, you just eat a little prasadam and chant 16 rounds. Certainly that's beneficial, but there's a lot more.
Yeah.
There's a lot more. Don't think about how little I can do for Krishna and get away with it. When you love someone, you want to do everything for that person. So we have to fall in love with Krishna. Thank you. Let's have a little discussion about, Nandaji, perfect. Nanda?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to add about Krishna revealing himself to you. Yes, it's very rare that he reveals himself and he reveals himself for a few minutes. But at the same time, he is revealing himself to us every day if we look for him. So it might not be his threefold bending form standing on our kitchen table or whatever, but he is revealing himself. He's there. He's here in this Bhagavatam. This is the Grantha Bhagavatam. This is Krishna revealing himself. And every time we read it, we get a little glimpse. And then the next time the glimpse is again different or bigger or whatever, another aspect of it. So that's what keeps us going in the meantime until he chooses to reveal himself fully. Yeah, but Nanda she always tells me about the wonderful little ways that she sees Krishna all the time. Right. It's wonderful. We have to learn to see Krishna in everything. In our association, in the scriptures, that's what Kate was saying before, right? We have so much opportunity to see Krishna and to make him part of our life. Anyone else have anything to say about that very important subject matter? Go on?
Yes, I do. I think if we don't have these little moments, we couldn't go on. These little moments are very important of developing this relationship, this close relationship. In Sankirtan, we have lots of these little moments that are so incredibly revealing that Krishna is responding to our efforts. We often shares our realization or whatever happens on Sankirtan because this is keeping us going on. This is the vision of Krishna realized in our lives. It is so important. How can we go on without that?
Yeah, we have to feel we're progressing toward our goal. We have to feel, and that's actually, we can get that in the association of devotees. Ian, do you want to say something?
Yes, quickly. There is a song all kinds of everything reminds me of you, a line from a very popular song. So I'm saying that in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, I am, I'm this, I am that. So you see a beautiful mountain or the ocean, that is, when you go to the ocean, of all these things, I am this, I am that. So
Yeah, I'm the
yes, there are so much things that remind you. And my favorite one in the morning, when it's a full moon, if it's very nice. There's no other feeling to look at a full moon in the morning, for a few minutes it's there. Yeah, and it takes over everything else. So all lights of the world, the full moon, kind of overshadows everything. So, there's so much things, it's little things, but it's there, to I am this, I am that. So 10th chapter, that's where you go. And there's the other thing, the mountain, the rivers are beautiful building. Yeah, it's an expansion of Krishna. So I can have everything, remind us of Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Good. That's perfect vision, to see everything and see how it reminds you of Krishna. We're very lucky about that. Mamatar, what do you think about that? About being reminded of Krishna? How do you do that in your work? That's a pretty intense job. She's a nurse. That's pretty intense.
It's all makes sense. But I was really thinking about Tisha's question, if you don't mind if I go back to that a little bit, because the stages of life, where people are you're born and you get married and you have children and you get empty nesters and so forth. It's also a material thing, but it also helps in reminding you of Krishna to when you go through those stages, to be somewhat detached from family in a certain way. It's certainly a slower process, especially if you don't implement bhakti in it. But it's a very genuine thing, when you're engrossed in family life, because you're performing functions that needs to be done. But you have to dovetail it to Krishna's to Krishna, obviously, to make it, reminding you of Krishna at every moment. But I think the stages of life helps to advance the individual to that pure consciousness that we were talking about earlier.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That was beautiful. The different stages of life. Sean?
Thank you, Mother Manvantara. I just wanted to add to that because it made me think of something. So when we go through family life, I've been through family life, right? Like my parents raised me and I left home. That's a natural thing to leave home. And like you were saying, it was growthful for me to leave home. It doesn't mean that I'm ungrateful for my family, although I probably am Westerner, I was. But it's a natural thing that I would stop thinking about my parents and think about, my dependence now, or Krishna's dependence is Krishna's family. Sorry, but it's a natural process that aids in Krishna consciousness. In other words, I went from a boy to a man, and that man can think more about Krishna.
Good. Very good. You see your own growth. You see how to use your own growth in life to become more Krishna conscious. As long as we know that that's what we want, and we have to keep reminding each other and engaging in these wonderful processes. So that's beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else have something? Tisha, do you want to? Oh, there's Shukshma Rupini, my dear god sister. What do you want? What can you say, sweetie? Shukshmaji. Unmute, darling. Your hand is up. Unmute.
There it is.
There you
Okay,
go.
you get it? Okay, well, even in my mundane life out here on the road, things happen. And I can only say it's Krishna. So, little by little, Krishna reveals himself by just putting his hand into your life through a difficult situation. Like I had things, I called them Christmas miracles. But then other things happened. I called it the New Year's miracles. But I just know it was Krishna helping me, struggling. Or when I find somebody to give a book to, an Uber driver, somebody behind the makeup counter, somebody in the parking lot, I just, physically, I sing to Krishna, thank you, over and over again, because I don't want to take it for granted. And I still want to see these, manifestations of Krishna. I'm not expecting to see Krishna in his threefold bending form. I'm just expecting these little things, this reciprocation. And I'm always so grateful. That's all I wanted to say.
Wow. This Sukshma Rupini is a senior book distributor. Yeah, she's been doing this for many, many years. Thank you, Sukshmaji. Okay. Anyone else want to say something about how they remember Krishna? Okay. And we'll think about that. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Hare Krishna.
See you next week. Vanchakalpa
Vanchakalpa-tarubhyascha,
Hare Krishna, have a good week, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Hare Ram.